Welcome to Everything CPA and Private Equity, where we unpack the evolving relationship between accounting firms, private equity, and other strategics. I'm David Wolfskehl, a partner at Whitman Transition Advisors.
And I'm Phil Whitman, CEO of Whitman Transition Advisors. And we've chatted with more than 150 private equity groups. We've actually closed over 40 transactions with those private equity groups. And we're bringing you firsthand insights from the front lines.
And whether you're exploring your first deal, putting your toe in the water, refining your strategy, we're here to guide you with real stories, expert advice, actionable takeaways. Let's dive in. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Everything CPA and PE. So excited. This is really a resource for leaders of firms to understand what's going on, to educate themselves. So if this is the right course of action, they have lots more facts to start moving. I'm here with Dave Kells, the leader of our profit team, and Phil Whitman. And today we're really going to talk about how to get ready to take meetings, how to make yourself ready and available, and how are you going to drive those opportunities. So we know we're recording this right around October 15th, and we know many of you are thinking about, I want to take some steps. So Dave, when we talk about getting ready, what kind of things, would you as a firm leader think about getting ready to start having meetings with outsiders?
Well, I think the first step in any of this is to do a little soul searching. I'm sure both of you would agree. You got to kind of know what you want, right? There's basically the world is your oyster mentality, but you got to really define and refine what you want personally, what you want for your partner group, what you want for your staff, what you want for your legacy of your firm, because that'll kind of dictate the process of where you go on the next steps.
And then Phil, so I love that, right? So often if you don't know what you want, it's hard to find. And if you do know what you want, and especially for clients we work with, if you tell us what you want, we probably know 2, 3, 4 players who can help you accomplish those. And then Phil, from a leadership perspective, right? Should they just wing it? Should they not know their numbers? Should they argue in the meeting? So why don't you share a little bit from a leadership team perspective?
Yeah, sure. So once that soul searching is done, I believe it's getting your house in order. And getting your house in order is, what are the stories you're going to tell during that first meeting? And very frequently, as you alluded to, David, there are times where we've been in meetings and one partner will say black and the other partner says white. And it's almost like they're having an argument in front of, the suitor, not a heated argument, but a disagreement. I think, the best of firms, the partners are in alignment. We worked with one firm and I would say they had it down. I mean, they were like, it was almost like scripted. They knew that, Dave Kells was going to talk about, where the history of the firm and how it got started. And Dave Wolfskehl was going to talk about where things are today. And Phil Whitman was going to be the guy that was going to talk about the wants and wishes of the future. And it's almost like a coordinated ballet, and I do believe you want to appear as a one-firm firm with partners in alignment, with partners that trust one another. But there's so much more to it. I mean, obviously, this is sort of like, okay, the curtain comes up and you're in front of that suitor, but there are so many things that are necessary before you even get to that point. I mean, okay, we have the luxury of being around October 15th, which means a month ago, September 15th, most firms, absolutely should have had their 2024 final numbers, shoemakers' children, holes in their shoes. Ours are the last returns that get done. But it's somewhat amazing how many firms, when the information requests start pouring in, either they don't have a clue or...
I mean, the information request, if you have your house in order, that for the most part is a non-issue because you're sending them what you have, right?
Yes.
Instead of having to figure it out.
So step 2, definitely get your house in order.
And Dave, you also, I saw you nodding your head. So you obviously have a couple insights about getting your house in order. And just For the audience, again, to remind you, Dave has done over 40 integrations as part of the Citron team. He was part of also the negotiations leading up to the merger. So, you've dealt with firms who've had their act together, and I'm sure you have dealt with firms who have not.
And maybe before Dave even goes into that, because before this call, this podcast, we were actually having a conversation. And one of the things Dave shared with me is later this afternoon on his podcast. Dave, help me. The name of your podcast?
The
Independent
independent
CPA.
The
yeah,
Independent
not
CPA
hidden.
firm. Yeah. So he's actually going to be meeting with his former partner in crime, Joel Cooperman, and that is sure to be a blockbuster episode. So be sure, if you haven't signed up for the Independent CPA Firm podcast, and that's your desire to remain independent, even if it's not your desire, there's great nuggets of wisdom there. And again, today he's going to be hosting Joel Cooperman, which I can't wait to see that podcast, Dave.
Yeah, I'm very excited, but it's also it's timely, and it's timely for this conversation because when you talk about getting your house in order, right? So 40 years of Citron's history was an independent firm, and then they obviously took a transaction. But you mentioned about getting your house in order. I mean, any kind of buyer is going to want to know the quality of your firm, and that's not just a word to throw around. It's the quality of your partner group, it's the quality of your culture, it's the quality of your people, it's the quality of your process. And so when you talk about getting yourself ready, getting your house in order, I mean, there's several steps before you start even taking those meetings of things that you need to do. And, one of the things that I think resonates well is a solid firm governance, transparent communication. You should be doing, I guess, at this point in time, some sort of postmortem soon after on your 3/4 of the year. You're got through 2 busy seasons. What are my staff saying? What are my leadership teams saying that we could do better? I mean, there's nuggets of improvement within your own firms if you just listen and then act on what your people are telling you on where you can improve. Again, from a process standpoint, from a cultural standpoint, people want to be involved. People want to be proud of the firms they work at. So it's not just the numbers. Now, the numbers are important. The cobbler's shoe thing, get your financials ready. That's the first thing a buyer's going to look for, but they're going to start diving a little deeper pretty quickly, and your firm better be solid.
And, talking about shoemakers' children, firms want to deal with people. These are going to be future partners. You want your future partner not to have their act together, to be always late with delivering information, right? Because then that's all. It's not only the information, it's also the delivery, the journey that these firms find. Because these are, for the vast majority, these are partners that you're going to have. And we believe you should behave like these are future partners at the earliest possible time and have that mindset. I also think that oftentimes firms think M&A is a hobby. So we'll do everything else, whether they're buyers or sellers, we found in the past, certainly. We'll get everything else done, and then we'll work on the financial request. And that's not the way to maximize it. If you're going to do something, it takes time, it takes effort, and it needs to be a priority. Bill, you also had a comment I saw.
Yeah, well, as you were saying that, Dave, I was thinking, during those very meetings, what you say and how you say it is very important. And I would say there are certain ways that you can phrase certain things. And I think it's important. It's almost like I could give the analogy, and we said, get your house in order. I mean, if you were to go to look at a home that someone was selling and they didn't first declutter, and then they didn't stage that house so that the future buyer could see the potential in the future, you would probably walk out and you'd say, "Oh man, what a piece of crap! That was a waste of time." I truly believe that this is a process. It's very important, and I do believe that you have to have your ducks in order.
You do, and that equates to enterprise value if you really boil it all down to. So a buyer would love to give a lower multiple on a firm that's got a lower value, but if you're doing your job and make yourself more efficient and more value, that equates to a higher multiple in your transaction. So we come in and, I think firms should be looking at those things if they want to enter into a transaction so that they're ready for it and they're ready to have solid negotiations at the table.
That's a great point, Dave. There are a lot of firms that we meet with and they don't have their house in order. And there are things that we have the ability to advise them and get their mindset thinking. Um, okay, if you start doing X, just imagine every additional dollar of bottom line revenue. It's not a dollar. In a potential transaction, it could be five, six, seven, eight, nine, $10. So we gotta start then thinking in terms of if we're gonna go down this road, what are the things that need to be done to maximize that enterprise value? And that's what Dave, in running the profits team, one of the very things he is excellent at helping firms with. How to give you that plug, Dave.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what we do. Myself and the team I have at the profit team here, we come out of firms. We know what it takes to become more profitable from a efficiency standpoint, top line growth, bottom line growth, utilization of offshore resources, all things to make your firm more profitable. And if you're sitting here listening to this and you're struggling, as I think many firms do, with gathering information from multiple sources that don't speak to each other, how can you possibly, really get a handle on the metrics of your firm if you don't have a nice, efficient process, a tech stack that does work for you rather than you just paying a monthly fee for the various software programs that you have? So we look at all of that.
And I think Phil earlier talked about like getting your house ready for sale. I also think you should think about if the other people didn't have their act together. So you're talking to these PE firms and just think if they were late on every time you asked them to do something, if they didn't have their information, if they didn't have a deck and they said, "Oh, we're working on it," all those things would probably move you farther away from that particular firm. And it's the same with you. And we see some firms get two, three, four LOIs, and we see some firms get zero or are lucky to get one. And again, Phil's literally talked to 220 plus P firms. We have contracts with 30 plus. Yeah, we know players, right? But sometimes if your act's not together, you become unattractive. If your
Well,
numbers aren't together.
it blows my mind, David. And you just hit on, what for me is a hot button. You're going down the road, you're doing a hopefully you're going to do a transaction with one of the suitors, and maybe you're talking to two or three of them, and they send you an information request and they hear crickets. No acknowledgement that you received the email.
No,
A
even
week goes by. A week goes by, you don't respond to them. And you know what? If I were on their side, I would probably be saying, if this is how this potential future partner is acting now, where my assumption would be we're in the dating stage and we're trying to, be as flashy and attractive as possible, then what are they going to be like when they actually become my partners? You need to be responsive.
yes, I think, I know Phil and we both are married 30 plus years. I think, Dave, you've been married a whole bunch of years as well. I acted a little bit different when I was courting than after, 20 plus years, right? And that's just the reality of the world, or at least my
I hope Marcy isn't watching these podcasts and listening very carefully, David.
I mean, she's lived the reality, so she knows that
Yes.
door on the car doesn't necessarily get opened anymore. Shame on me, but
Not all the times.
But the reality is this is the courting period. This is when you should be on your best behavior, and again, it should be a priority versus a fit in. And so all those things are very similar, whether it's your house, your spouse, thinking about how the other side would act. And again, what we find is the difference of having two people who are interested versus one person who's interested could be worth tens, hundreds, millions of dollars, right? And part of that is you having your act together. Let's flip topics just for a quick minute here. Some firms have skeletons in the closet. Some of them are big, some of them are perceived, some of them are not a big deal, right? But when do you communicate those things? When do you start talking about those things? So what's your thoughts on that?
So I'll hop in here because I've been I'm never a victim, but I'm going to use the word victim of having something sprung on me late in the game, and or somebody finding something out on their own without a firm disclosing up front. So my father, he taught me one thing. He said, if you always tell the truth, you never have to remember what you said. And what I mean by that is if you're transparent and there are some skeletons in the closet, I truly believe that that's something that, not during the very first meeting, but during the second or third meeting, you casually bring it up or you share it with us and we bring it up. I mean, I had a situation once. It was, I was bringing a partner from a prominent firm to an even larger, more prominent firm. And we're going through the process and it's to the point where the guy has an offer and they send him an authorization for a background check. And he says to me, Phil, I just want to let you know, I don't know how I should deal with this. Back in, 2017, I had a DUI. I swear to you, I had only had one drink and I was coming home from a party and, I got pulled over. I was going a little bit fast and, I ended up blowing and, I had that. What do you think I should do? And I said, oh man, you're going to be a leader in this firm. We have to disclose it. I said, and if you're okay, I'll bring it up. I'll let them know and we can take it from there. I mean, there's another really strong example where a firm was sanctioned by the SEC, for some poor quality work that they had done. Now, even though it was just a smack on the wrist, a small penalty, they didn't disclose this. And now you had someone that was going to be investing in the firm. And then you get to is my partner direct, open, and honestly communicating with me? And clearly the answer to that is no. So skeletons in the closet definitely have to be taken out of the closet and shared. And usually can be shared in a way that, in most cases, can be explained away. But better to
look,
explain it away than not to explain it all.
when we're involved in deals, and Dave, I'll get to you in 1 second, we typically do the explain, right? We typically are doing that communication. And I agree with you, Phil. I think the first meeting is about getting people excited. So I wouldn't talk about it as the first thing of the first meeting, but within the second or third meeting, if there's an issue, right? Why invest the time, effort, for something that might not happen. So Dave, I'm sure, with all the deals that you've done and all the deals you've looked at, there's been some skeletons in the closet. So why don't you share your insights?
Yeah, absolutely. My point would be, you might not lead with it, but it's going to be sooner rather than later. You're going to be disclosing. You have to. I mean, bad news is bad news. No sense hiding from it. In my experience, uh, my own career working with managing partners of firms, and I was chief operating officer. So basically, it was on my watch. The buck stops with me. Everything doesn't go smooth every day of the week. You better come clean real quick and talk about it, because otherwise you lose credibility. It kind of taints, in a transaction between firms. It's gonna taint people's perception again of partner alignment and whatnot. So sooner rather than later, and everything can be discussed and worked through.
I think the longer you
Everything
wait,
can be discussed and worked through when you're open, honest, when you're authentic, and almost every issue can be overcome if you work to overcome it. If you're working to hide it, it's a different thing, right?
I
And
think
now, how do we trust each other?
I think the longer you wait, David, you're right. That trust erodes, and it's kind of like the snowball that rolls down the hill. You kick the can down the road a little bit. The problem doesn't go away; it just gets bigger and bigger, and almost to a point where we have seen where it can derail a transaction when not disclosed.
And derail it at a late point where sometimes attorneys, sometimes quality of earnings have been done. So we're derailing it at an expensive point instead of derailing it at an inexpensive point and perhaps finding the right solution.
Okay. And to your point before about having your house in order, right? If you're a firm that's got this skeleton in the closet, you better have dealt with it the right way. You better have, worked past it, because I think, Phil, as you said, if somebody finds something out not from the discussion at the table, that's going to be a problem. And that goes back to having your house in order. leadership of any firm should have their finger on the pulse of what's going on in their firm in all aspects of it.
I'll share with you one just quick sort of humorous point. So I was working with this one firm that actually was sanctioned by the CC and the PCAOB, and the managing partner's comment to me was, "Phil, what's so bad about that? We're in great company. Every single one of the big four firms have had a time where they were sanctioned as well." The difference is when you're a small firm and you don't do as much of it as those larger firms, it's a much bigger problem in a smaller firm than it is in a big four firm.
Any final comments before we wrap up?
When you began this session, you said we're right around October 15th. And what that means is, and we're already seeing it. I mean, last week alone, we had probably a dozen inquiries based upon some emails that we sent out. People are tired. It's been a long, arduous, busy season. And some people are like, I need help. I need a lot of help. The talent challenges haven't gone away. The changes that are coming amidst artificial intelligence and required tech stack changes to compete and all the investments that are going to be involved. So I think we're embarking on a point of time, October 15th and forward, probably through January 3rd, where a lot of firms are going to be doing what Dave started this meeting with. They're going to be thinking about, what does my future look like? And do I consider merging with a firm? Do I consider taking an investment by private equity? What's the right direction we should go? And one of the things that I'd love to share, if you notice above Dave Kells' head, he has the independent CPA firm podcast. Okay. And we're hosting here Everything CPA and Private Equity. At Whitman Transition Advisors, we take a multi-pronged approach. We're not a hammer and nail. If you think you should merge, we're going to ask you why, okay? We're going to talk, and we truly believe that it's your life, and we will follow your wishes and desires, and we don't have any hidden agendas here. And, you've built something pretty amazing, most of you, and the question is, where do we go from here?
And if you're looking for a Sherpa guide who knows a lot, the WTA team's here to help you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We're happy to help there. If you like what you're listening to, please like and subscribe. That helps us spread our message. And really, we're about education first. Every 2 weeks, we meet with a new strategic. Phil's met with over 225 of them in general, and then these podcasts are a way for us to help share our education with our greater audience. So on behalf of David and Phil, have a great day. Go crush it. And thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
Thank you for tuning into Everything CPA and Private Equity. Every episode brings fresh insight. However, there's always more to talk about. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe wherever you watch podcasts. Have a question or topic you'd like us to cover? We'd love for you to reach out to us. Together, we will help you navigate this dynamic landscape so that we can help you achieve your goals. Until next time, keep making moves that matter. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.